Welcome to Chapter 12, Leadership. There is a lot to unpack in this chapter. It is very ambitious of them to try to cram everything, well, not everything, but a lot of big concepts into one chapter entitled Leadership. Generally, leadership could be an entire book or even a course. So we are going to go over some major theories and concepts in this chapter. Buckle up. There's a lot to cover, but listen, we'll do it together. It'll be fine. Okay, we're going to talk about the difference between leadership and management. Even though those terms are often used interchangeably, they have distinct definitions and roles. We're going to talk about trait and behavioral theories of leadership, contingency theories, transactional theories, inspirational theories of leadership, important concepts in leadership, and finally, we're going to cover fellowship or followership and the types of followers. Okay, so even though leadership and management are often used interchangeably for organizational behavior, they represent distinct but complementary systems of action. Okay, leadership on one hand is setting the direction of an organization, aligning people with that direction, and then motivating them to take action. So leadership is really about changing an organization, moving it to the next level. What do we need to prepare for down the road, and how are we going to get there? It's really the process of motivating, influencing, and enabling others to contribute to the organizational goals. Management is quite different. It is about controlling resources and accomplishing tasks. And they do this through planning, budgeting, organizing and staffing and controlling and problem solving. It is more about stability. So leadership is about this is where we're heading, and management is about I will get all the resources together and try to keep us stable on the plan and progressing towards whatever that organizational goal is. Okay, there's a lot to unpack in this slide, but I will go through it briefly. We're going to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of theories and models. And I know you are super excited to go through all of them, as I am, but we're going to start with the trait theories. Then we're talking about behavioral theories, contingency theories, transactional theories, and then finally, inspirational leadership theories. And believe it or not, this is just a small sampling of the many theories out there. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive, meaning that some of them overlap and that, again, these are theories. So some of them don't always translate well into practice. Let's start with the trait theories. Okay, so they first started studying leadership in the 1800s, trying to figure out what made good leaders. Were they simply born, or were there traits that leaders had? In a trait theory, it really distinguishes the quality and characteristics of a person. And they try to identify and measure what are these distinguishing characteristics that make good leaders. They say there's physical characteristics. There's a lot of research out there that say good leaders are a certain height and weight and physique, and they have a certain gender, energy, appearance, age. So there's a lot of physical attributes to good leaders. And a lot of research out there says good leaders are people who have similar height, weight, physiques, health, energy, and genders. Then the next trait theory is their personality. You know, are they adaptable? Are they extroverted? Are they confident? Do they have integrity? Are they optimistic? So what are the personality characteristics that make up a good leader? And then the final one is what are the abilities? Do they have social skills? Are they intelligent? Are they a good speaker? Do they work well with other people? And so trait theories have found some evidence that leaders may be more energetic. They may be more self-confident, emotionally stable, intelligent, cooperative, and sensitive to other people, more than the average person. But research is not definitive. It doesn't mean that if you don't have the right physical characteristics, personality, and abilities, you can't be a good leader, because there are some people that simply do not fit in the box. So the trait theory, although it is interesting, it may not be all encompassing. There may be other pieces of the puzzle here that helps us define what is an effective and successful leader. Behavior theories. So that brings us to behavior theories. And they emerged as a response to trait theories, where people say, listen, it's not really about how tall you are, big you are, or your personality. It's more about your behavior. And then rather than searching for certain characteristics, they wanted to say, okay, are there certain behaviors that make good leaders? And they conducted some research at Ohio State in the States and in Michigan to put together the foundation of these behavior theories. And their discovery was that certain successful leaders exhibited similar behaviors. And they came up with this grid. And it's called the leadership grid, and it's trademarked. So please, if you're ever going to use it, make sure you give reference to where it was created. So they came up with the leadership grid, and every person and every leader falls somewhere on this grid. And so if you look at someone who is impoverished, an impoverished leader has a low concern for both production and people. So at the bottom left-hand part of the grid, that's a 1.1. And then they have the authority compliance leader, and they have a high concern for productivity, but a low concern for people. And that is in the bottom right-hand corner of the grid, the 9.1. If you want to be middle of the road, a middle of the road type leader has a balance. They have a medium concern for the people in the organization and a medium concern for production. Then we have the country club leader, and they have a very low concern for production, but they really care about people. They're like, maybe we get the work done, maybe we don't, but what's important is that you're happy, right? And then maybe we have a party every Friday to make sure everyone feels included. So that's called a country club leader. Then the most effective team leader has a high concern for both people and production, and that is in the top right-hand corner of the grid at a 9.9. And this leader works to motivate people to reach the highest levels of accomplishments, and they also really care about the individual. So this has been identified as the most effective type of behavior in leadership. Let's move on to the contingency theories. Okay, what are the contingency theories? And the contingency theories, they contest that no leadership style is the best for all situations. Instead, this theory proposes that leaderships may be more successful using certain traits and certain behaviors depending on the situation. So success depends upon many variables, and the leader has to change up what they're doing depending on the situation. So they have to say, okay, what type of leader is needed in this situation, and then show up as that type of leader. We're going to break down these contingency theory models into a bit more detail. The first one is the Fielder's contingency theory. And what they have determined here is that the leadership style should adjust based on the situation. And that leadership is the critical component in making sure that organizations are successful. But depending on the situation, that leadership style might change. So there's something called the leadership style or the least preferred coworker scale. And so there's when in Fiedler's contingency theory, there's task-oriented leaders and there's relationship-oriented leaders. And this is similar to what we discussed in the previous slide. Task-oriented leaders are more concerned about the task, less concerned about the relationship. Relationship-oriented, it's the inverse. And the least preferred style is someone who has a very low level of task-oriented leadership and relationship-oriented. You want to care about both, right? You want to care about people's your relationship in the organization, taking care of people as well as the tasks. And then there's something called situational favoredness, and what that is, it means that the leadership's ability to exert control over the group. Leaders who have situational control are able to ensure that the demands of the organization are carried out. If you have very low situational control, you can't really carry through what needs to be done. And all of this depends on what is the structure of the task, what is the person's position, and what are the members of the organization looking for in respect to that leader. So a favorable leader is one who is structured, they work with the group, they have strong positional power, and they have good relationships with people within the organization. Let's move on to the path goal theory. Okay, Martin Evans and Robert House developed the path goal theory of leadership based on the expectancy theory of motivation. So the path goal theory proposes that a leader's role is to provide what is missing in the situation by examining the nature of the tasks, the operating environment, and what the subordinates are good at, their ability. So a leader assesses the following characteristics. What are the abilities of the people? What is the situation currently, and what needs to be achieved? So they look at the ability level of the employees, the ability or the degree of authoritarianism. So what level of kind of authority do they hold in that role, and do employees want to exert or take care of? And then locus of control, which is the extent to which employees believe that they have control over their achievement. So those are kind of the follower characteristics. So they look at the follower characteristics first of all, like who's in the organization, who are they working with, and then the workplace characteristics. And those are, what is the task structure that needs to be concluded? What are the work groups? And what is the authority system? So is it something like the military where it's very top down, or is it more like a flat leadership model where people are working in groups but they don't have any formal titles? And then based on those two situations, the leader will change the path of the leadership depending on how much effort needs to be exhibited, what performance and what rewards are tied to those. And then they want definitely the followers to be satisfied, to feel reward and benefit from the situation. So this is an interesting model, and this is probably more realistic, where people will have to adjust their leadership style based on who they're working with and what needs to be accomplished. The other thing that is a huge variable in leadership style is what is the situation, because different leadership might change depending on the situation. So that brings us to situational leadership model, which is the last of the contingency models. And the situational leadership model argues that behavior should be adjusted to the maturity level of the followers. So it looks at who are the followers, how mature are they, and then let me adjust my leadership style accordingly. So on the far left-hand side, we have low maturity, so they're unwilling or unable to be followers. They need to be given specific instructions and supervised very closely. And their task behavior is high and their relationship behaviors are low. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have a high degree of maturity. And these people are willing and able to be followers. And in this situation, instead of having to tell people what to do, you can delegate, meaning that you can empower people to tackle a challenge or complete a task. And the task behaviors there are low, and the relationship behaviors are also low. And then in the middle, you're trying to sell people if they're moderate, and if they're maybe a little bit better than moderate, then you can help them participate, kind of do it along the side. So this is a situational model, and this argues that depending on the follower and the maturity level, you are going to adjust how you do things. If there's low maturity, you're going to tell them. It's going to be simply, top-down, commanding type of style. And if they are more mature, then you can delegate it and say, listen, I know you got this. You've been doing this for a long time. I believe in you and have confidence. You can do it. Okay, that brings us to the transactional theory of leadership. In this theory, basically, it is a descriptive theory of leadership which focuses on how people relate and interact to one another. So it's also called the LMX model. It recognizes that leaders may form different relationships with followers and do not treat all subordinates the same way. The fundamental idea of this model is that there's two groups. There's the in-group and there's the out-group. And you want to be in the in-group. In-group members have a better relationship with the leader. They often base it on trust and respect that extends beyond the work environment. And those in-group members, they might get certain perks. Maybe they have a bit more responsibility. They're going to get more rewards and more attention. And they're kind of in the inner circle, right? And then in contrast, the out-group members are on the outside. They receive very little attention, fewer rewards, and they sometimes feel disgruntled and dissatisfied. So this is a really interesting theory, right? That people fall in one or two groups, the in-group, the out-group, depending on what the leadership kind of puts you in. And you definitely want to be in the in-group because you're going to get the majority of the responsibilities, rewards, maybe better work shifts, better projects, who knows. Okay, so we've gone through a number of different types of leadership models, which brings us to the most exciting one, and this is the inspirational theory model. And the inspirational leadership model, it goes with the name, and that this believes that followers are inspired by the leaders to do what they need to do, right? The transformational leaders, they appeal to ideals or moral values. They really highlight these and they talk about them and they motivate people based on these shared moral values. And then we have the charismatic leaders, and they use their personal abilities and talents to inspire people, inspire the followers to kind of achieve what they want them to achieve. And they use their charisma to do this. And then the last one is this idea of a servant model. And the servant model is a type of leader that they are stewards, and they essentially consider leadership as a very trustworthy type of role. And they believe that if they serve the followers and they make sure the followers are supported, that the followers will show up and do a terrific job at a terrific job every day when they show up to work. So this is the inspirational model. They don't believe in traits. They don't necessarily believe in motivational theories. They just believe in showing up and trying to do their best every day and encourage everyone else to do it as well. Okay, important concepts in leadership. So, despite the differences in all of these theories, there's certain concepts that are present in all of them. And good leaders have these four um, broad concepts. They have a high degree of emotional intelligence, so they are self-aware, they're empathetic towards other people, they really understand other people, and they're confident. They're trustworthy, so they know whom to trust and they know how to trust. They have a high degree of ethics. They're very transparent, and they they align themselves with the organizational values. And then this is probably one of the most controversial and interesting ones, and that is gender. So differences in leadership attribute to biases and stereotypes. There they are right there. So a lot of these are stereotypical, and they're also biases that we have in our culture that are present in a lot of cultures. And this is the idea that successful managers are more masculine and they exhibit more masculine characteristics or attributes than they do feminine ones. And then women are often judged as being less confident, maybe because of their tone of voice or the words they use when they're working or the way they stand or the way they hold themselves. And that evidence really demonstrates that feminine leaders, and this doesn't necessarily mean male female, it means people who have a feminine personality, are more people oriented and they're more inclusive and they're better managers because they have strong interpersonal skills, right? So it doesn't mean that necessarily having a highly masculine leadership style is beneficial. Sometimes being more people oriented and empowering and having stronger interpersonal skills is the superior way to lead. So it's interesting. This is an interesting topic. Something that gets overlooked a lot is followership. So here we are. We have been talking about this chapter for several slides, and we're deep into the chapter at this point, and we've yet to talk about the followers. We've spent all the time talking about the leadership. So there is a body of evidence and a way of thinking that really says the way that the followers act and behave has a huge impact on the organization, maybe even more so than the leaders, right? And so this this five types of followers, it's broken up into quadrants where you can see on the top we have independent critical thinkers. On the bottom, we have dependent, uncritical thinkers, and then we have very passive people and very active. So we start in the top left-hand corner, alienated followers. They think independently and critically, but they're very passive, and so they don't engage much. Below them, we have the sheep, and these are people who um, are very passive, and they don't do a lot of independent thinking. They kind of just follow the crowd. They simply do what they're told to do. Then we have in the bottom right hand corner we have yes people, and these people they're active, but they just don't do a lot of independent thinking. And these people are they do what they're told, and they're very active in the organization, but there's not a lot of critical thinking going on there. Effective followers are the most valuable to leaders, and these are people who both are active in the organization and they also think critically. These are the problem solvers. These are the people who think outside the box and that improve the organization as a whole. These are great people to have in an organization. And finally, survivors are the least disruptive and the lowest risk of the followers. Um, they just they stay in the middle, and their motto is better safe than sorry. They really just kind of plod along, and if they don't show up to work today for a day, not many people uh, notice. Okay, that was a quick overview of these five different types of theories: trait theories, behavioral theories, contingency theories, transactional theories, and inspirational theories, as well as some concepts of leadership and followership as well. So do take some time to dig into these models a little bit more, because the textbook always provides some rich context in really understanding these concepts at a depth that you need to for our assignments, our quizzes, and our tests. If you have any questions about any of that information, as always, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask. And have yourself a great rest of the day.